Welcome to the Going North podcast, where you will be informed, encouraged, and empowered to embrace your dreams and advance in life through authorship. I'm your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course and certified leadership trainer, Dom Reitman. Be sure to check out the goods and services from every guest, as well as the host himself, yours truly. Now let the fun begin. And today on the wonderful GMP, the great, glorious, and glamorous, the Going North podcast, we got one heck of a super special, awesome human for you today, my friends. We got another doctor in his house, y'all. We got another doctor in his house because today's guest in particular, my goodness, he uses his historical insight and cultural inspiration to empower audiences to rethink and reimagine how they lead, teach, pastor, and parent. This wonderful gentleman right here has over 30 years of training experience, and he's a sought-after speaker both nationally and internationally, and has penned over a dozen books on leadership, culture, history, classroom management, and creative communication. And when he's not speaking and teaching, he also enjoys collecting antique technology, pop culture, watching baseball, riding his motorcycle, traveling, and riding. And to put the icing on the cake, he lives with his lovely wife, Linda, and adorable dog and ornery cat in a small town outside of Boise, Idaho. So let's give it up for the one, the only, the RC himself, the radiant and courageous Dr. Rick Chromey. How you doing today, Dr. Rick?
I can hear the applause in the background. And by the way, you read that just like I wrote it. So thank you very much. I think of all the I think of all the introductions I've ever received, that was the most recent one. So thank you very much. Wow. I'm going to have to shorten my introductions.
Oh, no, it was a good size. It was a good size. Don't worry. It's all good. Don't worry. There's longer ones out there, and I've probably read one of them just out of respect, and it just felt bad afterwards in the editing process. Like, wow, yeah, I think I'll shorten his, but yours is just right.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe it was just the wonderful voice that you have. I'm sitting here listening going, why did God give me a voice like Dom? I need a voice like Dom. I got a voice like dumb. I got a dumb voice. You got a Dom voice. That's
Nah, you got a Rick voice. It's a great voice indeed.
Okay. Yes. And I'm actually speaking to you from like early in the morning out here in the Mountain West. And so I have my morning voice. Yeah. That very cool, deep voice going today.
That's right. Making a lady swoon, right? And making sure Linda fights him off.
I'm happily married. Love my wife. Love my wife, Linda.
That's right. That's right, ladies. Once again, he's taken. That's right. No sugar daddy action here, y'all. That's right. Oh, man. But before we go too far south, we got to head back up north because with all introductions, I'm pretty sure I probably missed a cavity or 20. So anything you want to add on to the introduction I may have missed?
Dom, I don't know. I think that was pretty good. Obviously, I'm a writer. I speak. One of the things I tell writers all the time is that you've got to be a good speaker if you want to see your writing career work, because writing and speaking go hand in hand. If you write well, you're going to get speaking opportunities. And if you speak well, you're going to get writing opportunities. Just the way it works. So you need to hone both those, and communication is key. The ability to communicate your ideas succinctly, briefly, and in a vibrant, dynamic way is going to be your secret sauce, you might say, to success.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You're so right about that. Like, I wish they would really teach like that aspect of communication in schools, the public speaking aspect, because that's like set so many people back. Like a lot of people be like, "Oh God, I'm so scared to speak." The whole classic Seinfeld quote where it's like, "Oh, they'd rather be in the casket than the one giving the eulogy because they're that scared of it." It's like, it's not that bad. Once you know, if you know what you're talking about, you'll be fine.
Well, my secret to communication, first of all, it's practice. It's about experience. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's interesting. I do podcasts all the time with wonderful hosts like you, and there tends to be common lines you go down there. The questions tend to be about the same, and the setups tend to be about the same. So you kind of learn, what works with an audience, and you just keep going back to that. I mean, it's nothing different than what a musician does. He writes a great song, and the audience wants to hear that over and over and over again. And so I just treat every person I speak to as if this is the first time they've ever heard me. And secondly, it's all about relationship. When I'm doing a workshop or I'm speaking somewhere, I don't like to be behind the curtain waiting to go out on stage to talk to a bunch of faces I don't know. I want to get to know my people as soon as I can. So a lot of times I'm down there in the audience before I even speak, just getting to know people, hearing their stories, what do they enjoy, why'd they even come, and I want to be real with my audiences, and I think that comes out not just in my communication style, but also my writing. I'm a real type of writer, and I get that compliment a lot. And I think actually that's probably the greatest compliment you can get as a human being, is that you're real.
Man, oh man. A man dropping gems, baby. That's right. We're going to be reaching tennis bracelets soon with all these gems, baby, because that's the greatest human compliment, to be real, y'all. That's right. People tired of these pleather jackets, y'all. Well, maybe not Peter, but that's a whole other different group. But yeah, they don't want the pleather jacket, metaphorically speaking. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So my goodness. And with pastorship and leadership, my goodness, those two go hand in hand so much. So any three major leadership lessons that stick out to you from your time in pastorship, because that's a hard job to take on.
Well, I'm actually still a pastor. I just work with the smallest church in America, a group of about 15 people every Thursday night. So, we gather for a time of just looking at the Bible and trying to understand how it works in our world today. And so I pastor a small church, you might say, in that way. But as far as leadership goes, I think it comes down to how you motivate. I mean, that's a big part of who I am. It's been a big theme of what I teach and talk about is motivating without bribery, motivating without gimmicks, motivating without games. So many times what we like to do is we like to externally motivate through bribery. Like, if you do this, I'll give you that, and incentives and such. And what I've discovered is those are very poor motivators. As human beings, deep inside we have needs, and just like our stomach growls when it's hungry, our needs also growl from within our soul. And I've actually positioned them as an acronym, and I'll just briefly give them to you. The growls, if you focus on these as a leader, you're going to actually inspire people, you're going to empower people. And the growls, GROWLS, is first one's grace. We have to build an environment of grace. People starve for grace today, and grace is nothing more than an unconditional environment. I know that you're a John Maxwell guy, Dom. I saw that on your own resume, and I think John would really agree with this one. It's about finding creating environments of grace where it's not, you can fail, you can make a mistake as a person, and you can still have a place. You can still be at the table. And a lot of leaders do the opposite. We motivate where if you don't get it right, you lose. And that's the difference. Grace is, even if you get it wrong, you win. And I love that. R is relationship. We all hunger. We're designed for relationship. I think we learned that in our COVID moment for the last year and a half, is that we're designed for relationship. We're, this whole idea of, I call it physical distancing, not social distancing, because we didn't really socially distance. We just physically distanced for a year and a half. And, social distancing did not happen. We were still a very social culture. We just did it more online. In fact, we did it online, period. But relationship, because if you don't be long, it's so long. People distance themselves. They leave. The O in growls is ownership, and that speaks to choice. That speaks to contribution. That speaks to the ability to have it's you. It's about you and being empowered to be who you are, to use your gifts, talents, and abilities. The W is worth. you have to be affirmed. We have to create an environment as a leader where you feel value, you have a voice, you have the ability to cast your vision, and someone says, you know what, that's not bad. Let's run with that. And I always tell leaders that if you just focus on those four environments, if you can create an environment where there's grace and relationship, ownership and worth, GROW, you will grow your team, you will grow your staff, you will grow your volunteers. And if you think about that within your family unit, if you just focus on these with your kids, grace, relationship, ownership, and worth, it will grow your family dynamic. If you focus, if you're a teacher, just employ these in the classroom. It will grow your students to be more affectionate toward what you're teaching. It will grow attention in the classroom. It works. The L and the S, I call those four needs, by the way, I call the power needs. We all have these power needs. The L and the S are the primitive needs. These are really the basics to get us started on a pathway. The L is laughter. A lot of people don't think about laughter. They don't think about fun or pleasure as being a deep need, but it really is. In fact, you can't spell fun without starting with fundamental, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to have fun out there. And so that's what I loved about your podcast. When you say I want a fun guest, I'm going, hey, I'm fun. I'm not always funny, but I'm fun. So let's go hang out with Dom for an hour and see what he has to say. Yeah. But that's the L, pleasure. We live in an entertainment culture, and what happens in an entertainment culture is where it's very superficial. We're going from one high to the next high to the next high. But what we don't realize is what's driving those highs is this fundamental need to just have pleasure, to feel, hey, have some fun in your life. The S, security. Deep down, we all want to have security. We want to live in a safe and secure environment. And that's financial security, that's physical security, that's emotional security. And so those are the primitive needs that we have. And when you put them all together, you get the growls, because that's what your stomach does when it's hungry. That's what your soul does when it's hungry too. It's about being a human being, not a human doing.
Man, oh man, I'm telling you, well, we already graduated from tennis bracelet after that. When we got the whole dang necklace here with this one, man. We got, man, we probably got some Don King swag going on here around the neck with all this wisdom man just dropped, especially with that first one, building an environment of grace. Like that is so powerful right there. And folks may be thinking like, oh, grace, like ain't that Christian? Like, hey, well, yes, it is, but also it's for everyone because like, especially last year when the darn pandemic first started, grace was needed all over the place, and leaders felt so comfortable to realize, okay, God, I can and finally admit that I don't know because this virus is invisible. We don't know. I can finally admit it.
Yeah. Well, we have to be forgiving of ourselves. Inherent to the whole idea of grace is forgiveness. And that's not just forgiving other people of their mistakes, it's forgiving yourself of your own mistakes, your own faults, your own misperceptions. And I think that's what happened in COVID was the science. I mean, when you look at it, even today, I posted on Facebook just because I like to generate conversations on my personal page with my friends. And I posted just some basic statistics about COVID that have come out now. I mean, we're into this for a year and a half. And most people are surprised to learn that when you compare COVID, and I think it's due to better healthcare, vaccinations, and all the ways that we did respond to COVID. But when you compare COVID to previous pandemics, it's a fraction, and I'm talking like point zero something, a fraction of the death rate compared to the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu took 2.5% of the entire world population. We're not even nowhere near that. We're like 5 or 6 times less than the Spanish flu of 1918. When you look at the bubonic plague of the 1300s, it took a quarter of the world's population. When you look at some of the earlier plagues in the Roman Empire, had a great plague that went through about 550 AD. It took almost half the world's population at that time. And so a lot of people get up when they get with COVID, we start getting, oh my goodness. And yeah, we may have overreached. I think there were certain states that maybe overreached in how they responded, but everybody had to kind of go their own way. We didn't know. Here in Idaho, we had more of a wide open approach to it, and we had our peaks and we had our criticisms of those strategies as well. But I think in the end, for those of us who lived here, we tend to have more of a kind of a eyes wide open approach. You just like you don't blow smoke in another man's face. I wore a mask. I wore a mask because it was the right thing to do. You know, I didn't have to wear a mask sometimes, but I did because it was the right thing to do. And now our COVID numbers are like non-existent. They're not even reporting them out here in Idaho anymore. They're just about once a week we get a COVID report. It's so minuscule. It's not even an issue. And I think a lot of that again goes to vaccination. Although, to throw the inconvenient truth out there, a lot of people know that Idaho is one of the least vaccinated states in the country right now. And yet our COVID numbers are like really small. So I don't know, the science is all over the place. And what was interesting was, I get back to my point, was as I wrote about that, and this is what I tell writers all the time, sometimes what you need to do is take a thought, throw it out there to your friends, and just see what they think. And man, oh man, I gotta tell you, there was people on both sides just going at it just badly. And my inclination, it used to be, I actually changed on this. My inclination was always to jump in and try to maneuver the conversation towards what I was feeling, what I was thinking. I've learned just to sit back and let them go and let them talk. And what I've discovered is that even the people that I had some disagreement with, very dear friends, by the way, as I listened to them, I thought, or listened to what they wrote, I thought, that makes some sense. I could see why they were seeing it from that angle, but, we need disagreement. And I think that's what good writing is. When you think about the best books, the best writing out there, there's this inherent conflict within it. Every great story has a conflict that's needing to be worked out. In fact, the best endings are where the conflict is never really resolved. It's still there, and it forces that person or that reader to want the next book, the next writing. I got to keep watching this TV show because it's not resolved in my mind. Conflict. I love that.
There we go. There we go right there. An interesting take on disagreement and conflict because it's so darn sure, especially from that aspect, because that's how shows really stay, at least the good ones, that's how they really keep eyeballs on the screen for so darn long. It's like, oh man, a cliffhanger, like, oh, what are they gonna do next? Like, oh my gosh, no, I must find out. I gotta wait a whole freaking week to see this now, especially back in the day before Netflix. Here's like you had to wait a whole freaking week. And even then it's like, oh no, I gotta wait another week now. You just want to keep them coming back for more, keep them coming back for more. And it's really interesting too that you start those conversations on your Facebook page. You just let folks actually really just speak their mind, and then you just see it from their perspective and see what they were thinking, as opposed to just trying to get them all to go back to your way of thinking, because that at the end of the day, it's like a little extra unnecessary work nowadays, because like it seems like almost like herding cats, because not everybody's probably going to believe or think the exact same way, because everybody has different, I guess in a way, different backgrounds and a different upbringing and everything. And that's probably even what's led to this awesome book you have, Gen Tech, where you're going through the different generations and just giving them different names based off of the technology, as opposed to the lazy names that you call with the letters, because it's like, oh, Gen Z. So I guess we already finished the alphabet, so where are we going to go now?
Well, we're actually going to Gen A, believe it or not. There are people there are people out there arguing that the newest generation is called Gen Alpha, and I'm going, stop. It's I've been writing on and thinking about generations for probably 30 years. A lot of people ask me, how long does it take to write a book? I said, well, this book took 30 years to write. I wasn't ready to write it in 1980, or 1990, when I really started to think about generations seriously. I had to write about it. I had to speak about it. I had to let other people speak into my life. I had to speak out of my own life. I had to allow time to go by to see whether or not the trends I was talking about really were rooting in culture. And about, it was actually in my doctoral work that I was doing. I put together a theory. I call it cultural language theory. And that is the idea that there are about every 500 years, we have a shift. And it's a shift that literally the whole cultural language changes. We move into we just interact differently. We socially interact. We, how we communicate with one another. Everything just changes. And what I found interesting was that as I analyzed these historic shifts through the ages, that they tend to be about every 500 years, and they tend to also be rooted to technology. That's what I thought was interesting. For example, in the about the 1300s, the last big shift we had, 1300s to 1500s, that shift was around three big, I called them megatechs. The mega technology of the Gutenberg press moved us into a print culture. The megatech of the mechanized clock. Most people don't think about how the mechanized clock shifted our culture, but it literally put us into boxes, Dom. It literally put us into, we were a culture of the o'clock. We started to define our whole life by 7 o'clock or 3 o'clock, or in our case, 8:30 o'clock. The clock, we can't even say time without using the technology to do it. I'm a church man, as you mentioned. I found it interesting that in this culture, we moved from being the church to going to church. Church became less a place of people and more a space. We put church inside a building. So when we think about a church today, we think of it as a building, when it wasn't even, both biblically and really socially, it was never a facility. It was a place of where people, it was a gathering.
Amen.
But so there you have the mechanized clock. And the last one was the scopes, the microscope and the telescope. Those technologies really pushed us into what I call a modern age. Well, in the last 70 years, 80 years, we've had three new technologies emerge. Hey, why don't you guess what they are? The three megatechs that have emerged in the last 80 years that have shifted our cultural languages. What do you think they are, Dom?
Oh, wow. The last 80 years. Okay. Definitely, I would have to say it has to be the smartphone. It has to be definitely one of them, right?
Actually, you're right. Yeah, the smartphone is one, although I would argue that it's the cell phone, period. The smartphone is an evolution of the cell phone, but the cell phone itself had the ability to flatten our culture, where we could communicate with anyone, anywhere, anytime. We didn't need to have a cord anymore. We didn't need to have, and even you think about cell phones, the only thing consistent in our culture today is your cell phone number. You can travel to a different address, you can go anywhere, but your cell phone number stays the same. Have you noticed that? Unless you want to change it, right? It used to be when you changed address, you changed your phone number. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
cell phone. What, you got one of, ding, 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 ding. You got one of the three. What are the other two?
Sweet. This is where things get more challenging. All right. So the next one, I'd have to say, your cell phone. That was the easy one. Next one.
Actually, your smartphone relies on this next technology to make it smart.
Oh, well, I'll be. I'm guessing computers. Now that I think about it, it has to be, right?
You're there. You're in the ballpark, Dom. Yeah, I mean, you're swinging, and the ball has connected with the bat. It's the internet. See?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
How can I forget? I
Yeah.
remember
How
that
can you
one.
forget the internet? Yeah. See, the internet again had the ability to flatten culture. Computers, before the internet, computers were just in different places, and yes, it was more local, but you didn't have the ability to communicate with somebody else. So the internet was that technology that made computers a flatline culture. Okay, so you got the internet, you've got the cell phone. What do you think is the third one? And this one
See,
is the oldest. This is the oldest of the three, by the way. So you have to go back a little bit. But once you go,
was
go
it the
for it.
Betamax?
Betamax, go back further than that.
Oh,
Betamax
wow.
used this technology.
Ooh, okay.
So, because you're talking about video recording.
Ah, darn. So I guess TV, that won't be it, huh?
That's it. That
It
is
is?
it.
Okay.
Television. Yeah,
Sweet.
television. Television emerged in the 1940s here in America, and it really didn't catch root until the 50s. And in the 60s, it had its tipping point. And now we are instead of being what we call an oral AURAL oral culture, where we hear things. that was the radio culture. We've now moved into a visual culture. Everything is visual today. You think about the television, several of my generations really, the television generation was 1940 to 1960, but cable television generation emerged out of that. The gamer generation emerged out of that technology as well. So these megatechs have the ability to produce additional generations. So what happened, and just to make a long story really short, my book is about, hey, let's get rid of the boomer label. Let's get rid of the millennial label. These labels that mean nothing when you think about what is Gen X anyway? What is Gen Z? They're boring, lazy labels to kind of mark people. I argue that yes, there are generations, but our generation is guided and really guarded by our comfort technology, the technology that was popping when we were between the ages of 10 and 25. So when you go back, I go back to 1900, the first technology, there was a twin technology popping. It was transportation and telephone. Those were popping in the early 1900s. Then you had motion pictures, and then you had radio popping, and then you had the vinyl record generation, 1930 to 1950. You had the television generation, 1940 to 1960. You had the space generation, 1950 to 1970. The gamer generation, 1960 to 1980. The cable television generation, 1970 to 1990. The other twin technology generation, we call them millennials today, but technically their twin technologies are the personal computer and the cell phone. I call them the PCCP generation because they flip. and it's interesting. The flip phone was their first technology. Yeah, isn't this crazy? And then the internet generation, the net generation, born between 1990 and 2010. I call them don't call them Gen Z, call them the iTech generation. Little I, big T, because they were groomed on iTunes, iPod, iPad, iWatch, iPhone, all these iTechnologies that came out of Apple. I call them the iTech generation, born between 2000 and 2020. And in my book, I actually take us out all the way to 2055, because that's when the last of the Robo Generation, born since 2010, between 2010 and 2030, the robotics generation is being born, and their coming of age years will stretch out all the way to the year 2055. So my book covers 1900 to 2055, and it's just a fun romp through history. It's full of stories and maybe even questions at this point. So that's the outline of that work, and it's probably been my most favorite book to write out of all the books I've written. I've enjoyed it.
And I can really tell, and it's really powerful. That's 155 years of history and future telling, man, because it's, my goodness, that's a lot. And I love the fact that you're able to really give it better titles, and it's really kind of a bigger way, and it's even easier to remember, I would think, because the thing about millennials, they keep on getting the age ranges confused, because there's like a certain like earlier millennial cusp of like 30 to 40-year-olds, and some chicks who are like in their late, and dudes in their late 30s, early 40s, like, I'm no freaking millennial.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the problem, Dom, is that first of all, the way we do generations is we stack them up linear, like they're a ruler, and we just kind of one generation. And so the classic, I was born in 1963, so I was classically called a baby boomer. Never felt like a baby boomer in my life. That's part of what brought out my thinking on this, because I just never really related to that. I always felt more Gen X, and if you're going to give a classic label to it. And it wasn't until Strauss and Howe, Neil Howe and William Strauss came along with a book called Generations, where they kind of reimagined these generations, and they recast Gen X, although they didn't call them Gen X at the time, but Gen X between 1961 and 1981. Well, that made a lot more sense to me. I was going, okay, yeah, I'm more Gen X. But one of the things they bring out in their writings, and I concur with this, is that in these generations, there are waves. You think about two waves. There's a first wave and a second wave. So when you look at boomers, for example, the boomers that were born in the 40s, the 1940s, they are what I call the Elvis wave boomers. But the boomers born in the 1950s, they're the Beatles wave boomers. So they're just different waves. When you look at millennials, you can look at them through the presidents. The early millennials were Reagan Bush babies. If you look at the later millennials, they're Clinton Bush babies. I mean, you just look at them. So there's waves, and but what I love about, and I don't want to. Well, yeah, I do want to be persuasive with my theory. What I love about my theory is that generational theory, if you've listened, they actually overlap. You're part of two different generations. Being born in '63, I'm part of the space generation and the gamer generation. Well, duh. Yeah, when I was 10 years old, my first cultural memory was man going to the moon and playing Pong. I mean, that's what I remember was man going to the moon. I mean, they made several moon landings during my 10th birthday, and I was playing Pong at the local bowling alley. That was my first, and that's how we've lived life. But what year were you born, Dom? You look like a young guy.
Oh yeah, one of the Bush Clinton millennials. That probably the Clinton was 91. So yeah.
You're an 81. Okay.
Oh,
So
91.
you're 91. Okay.
91,
So
yeah.
1980 to 2000, that would be the personal computer, cell phone generation. But also 90 to 2010, you'd be part of the net generation. So those were your three technologies: personal computers, cell phones, and internet. That's what wired you to be who you are. That's why you're the fabulous Dom today, is because of those technologies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was so exciting to get a flip phone back in the day. Like, I guess when I turned like 13, it was so freaking exciting, as opposed to like some parents nowadays, like, oh, before they're 5, some of them even get something. I'm like, oh God, no, don't do that to them.
Yeah.
What?
Today, the average age for a smartphone is 10 years of age. 10 years of age. Wow. But what's interesting is this new generation, I call them the Robo Generation. They're growing up in what I call a hair technology world. They have three technologies: HAIR. Do you know I love acronyms? Okay. That's what helps me remember this. And I want to make it very easy for people to remember it. But the hair technology, there's three. H is holographic. We're growing up in a holographic culture. That's what's coming. There's going to be a point where you and I can have this conversation by hologram, and that will be an interesting day. It will look like we're actually in the same room with each other. We'll be able to have meetings with people and be in the same room with each other, but one of us will be a hologram. Secondly is artificial intelligence. AI is going to explode. The smartphone was the beginning of that. The smartphone is artificial intelligent technology, but you're starting to see it. Think about Alexis or Siri, those type of technologies, or Portal with Facebook, the Facebook portal. All those technologies, they are all part. In fact, I have to be very careful talking about that because I have a Alexis right in my room here, and she'll wake up and she'll start yakking at me if I'm not careful. Stuff, because she's listening. Isn't it interesting? They're always listening. Well, what's interesting is this third R is robotics. Robotics, holograms, artificial intelligence, and then R in hair is robotics. The robotics is going to be an explosive technology in the next 10 years. It's interesting in my research, and I state this in the book, that you start in 1900 because there's been more technological change since 1900 than there has been in the entire history of the world. Just let that one sink in for a moment. Since 1900, there's been more technological change. But in the last 20 years, since the year 2000, there's been more technological change than in the previous century. Think about what happened yesterday or this last weekend. A private citizen named Richard Branson literally went into space. That's where we're headed. I mean, it used to be you had to have a career in astronautics, and you had to go to Houston and learn how to be an astronaut, and had to go through all these paces to get on a special ship that the government would only let certain people on. And you can go in the future, you and I, if you got the money, of course. And I think probably in the distant future, the price of those space flights are going to go down to where, it's like airlines. At one time, the reason why everybody dressed up to go on an airplane flight was because everybody was rich. It was a rich man's sport to get on an airplane. But in 1968, 69, when they shifted and changed, they actually built the first Boeing 747 at that point. When they built those bigger planes that could house more people, suddenly we could get more people on a plane, and that created the culture of airline flying. Today, we think nothing of jumping on an airplane as an average person and flying across the country. That's where space is going to go in the next 50 years. We're going to think of nothing of flying to the moon, for a weekend. That might be the next great retreat. Although it'd be a little bit of I hope there's cheese up there. I never did they ever find cheese on the moon? You got me riffing right now. So
classic. Used to love hearing it as a kid. It's like, oh yeah, the moon is made of cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're so right about that though, and it's definitely interesting too, because when I heard about that yesterday, I'm like, oh wow, for real? Like this is happening, and it actually happened, and it was so short. What was it, like an hour? A couple hours?
Yeah. It's a beta flight. It was a test flight with the engineers of his company there, and it's coming. But in the next 10 years, that's where you need to buckle up, Buttercup, because the next 10 years, there's going to be more change than the last 20 as we move into this holographic, artificially intelligent, robotic culture. I bought my wife one of those little robot vacuum cleaners for Christmas. And my first thought was, why did I wait so long? My goodness, if you don't have an iRobot taking care of your carpets, where are you? Get into the 21st century here. I mean, those are amazing. You don't have to vacuum. They actually do better vacuum job than I did. I thought I was pretty good at vacuuming. But when I have to clean that and go, oh my goodness, look what it's pulling up. I'm going, I don't live that dirty, but it does that good of a job. So I'm definitely an iRobot guy, or actually anything robotic. But I was in Sweden here a couple of years ago. My wife has relatives in Sweden, and I went over there, and I woke up the first morning I was there to this whirring noise outside. Now, what in the world is that? It was the robot lawnmowers. In Sweden, wow. You can't have gasoline lawnmowers, so you either have to cut the grass the old-fashioned way with a push mower, or the caste system over there is robot lawnmowers. If you have some money, you have robot lawnmowers. And so my Swedish relative actually sells these things. So I asked him, I said, when did Sweden get robot lawnmowers? Because I had just seen my first robot lawnmower that summer. That was 2019. That summer at Lowe's. Lowe's had this little pin outside their front, and they had a little green AstroTurf grass, and they had this robot lawnmower going around, and it was like a novelty. People were standing around looking at it going, oh, isn't that cute? Look at that. Look at that, Mabel. Look at that. That's amazing. Well, I asked my Swedish relative, I said, we're just getting this over in America. We're on the cutting edge of technological evolution. America is. I said, when did you guys get it? He said, 1995. And
what?
In Sweden, they've had robot lawnmowers since 1995. They were primitive, but there were people already putting them out there. But now I think it's about half of the lawns in Sweden are done by robot lawnmowers. They're everywhere. They're everywhere in Sweden. Everywhere I looked, I saw robot lawnmowers.
Wow. Well,
yeah,
hey,
it's coming. It's coming, Tom. You're going to have a robot. You're going to have a robot barber in the future. Your clothes are going to be smart clothes. Can you imagine when your clothes are connected to the internet, how that's going to change everything? That's what's coming. Everything you do will be monitored by Siri or Alexa or Big Brother or whatever you fear is out there that's monitoring you. Yeah, but that's real. That's where our culture is going, tech-wise, anyway.
Man, well, I feel bad for the gym clothes that are going to be connected to the Wi-Fi.
Gonna have to have a sweat meter, huh?
My God, freaking gym clothes connected to the internet, huh? Like, all right.
Well, I mean, that probably produces an interesting moment, because if your gym clothes get too rank, let's just put it that way, they start smelling a little bit much, I imagine they'll start beeping at you and telling you, put me in the wash. And then your robot will come along and say, you need to wash, so let me help you out. And they'll pick up your clothes and take them to the wash. Yeah. But you do know that all the major appliances right now are internet connected. They're already smart. I mean, washer and dryer are smart dryers now. They're internet connected. Refrigerators, stoves, microwaves, all the major appliances. I purchased for the first time one of those little rings, doorbells. So, I mean, just to have some security around the house and be able to see who's at my front door. Oh my goodness, I'm on vacation and my doorbell rings. And I look down at my smartphone and I can tell who's standing outside and I can talk with them and say, sorry, I didn't tell them nobody's home, but I said, can't come to the door right now. You know, what an amazing world we live in.
Oh yeah, definitely like that. It's like, oh man, I'm like thousands of miles away in a separate country and I get to still answer the door.
Right. Do you like baseball, Dom?
Not too much. I blame the Baltimore Orioles for that one.
That's right. Well, it does help if you have a baseball team to root for, I suppose. But,
yeah. They were
But
good for a couple seasons, then just went back further down to the abyss. I'm like, no, take it though.
I lived in St. Louis twice, so I became infected with cardinal disease, or as I like to call it, cardinal COVID. You know, I got infected with the Cardinals, and they're my team. But again, you know, it used to be you had to be within radio distance to listen to your favorite team. And then you had to be within the television broadcasting distance to watch your favorite team. Well, now with the internet, I can watch every Cardinal game anytime I want, whenever I want. You know, those technologies have flattened our culture, made it much more fluid, fast.
Yeah, I can say that again. My goodness, it's like, man, technology just is gonna iron all of the culture, y'all. That's right, it's gonna iron it. It's gonna make it nice and pressed indeed, fresh pressed like a glass of orange juice from some actual orange. That's right, indeed.
I wasn't going to go with that metaphor, but now that it's actually fairly appropriate. Pressed orange juice. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, with all this wonderful research that you've done, and my goodness, 30 years of putting this wonderful book together, that's really probably should be in every school, to be honest, because folks are going to be needing it just now more than ever.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, it's like, so is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often about the book, or heck, even just of you yourself when you're on this magical gift side of the game on these podcasts?
You know, it's just for me, it's about giving a gift back to the world, if you will. You know, I think every writer wants to have that particular legacy work that you say that you look back on, and maybe it's a work that doesn't even root now. You know, obviously I would love to have seen this book come out. And the problem with my book is that it released on Memorial Day weekend of 2020, which was the worst time for a book to release. Now, my publisher thought it was a great time when we initially put this publishing schedule together because of summer reading. But any book that was released in the summer of 2020 just tanked. There are some great books out there that didn't go anywhere, and writers are just like, oh my goodness. I had also my publicist had a number of booking tours set up for me. She had bookstore stops and signings, and I mean my summer was loading up, and COVID just killed it all. Which is what we have to remember is, and why I'm doing podcasts is because I realized that this is probably the best way for me to talk about my book. This is the most affordable. This is the most convenient and the most influential way that I could talk about my book is getting in face to face with someone like Dom and your amazing audience. Anybody that's listening to you has got to be going north in their world today, and so it's great to be a part of your audience. So for me, you know, most people ask just great questions about the book, so I really don't have any more questions to or answer. But for me, I want to say, you know, please check it out, and if you like what you read, put it Give me a good mark on Amazon, because that's what I'd like to do, is see this book get to the next level. It just needs to have that tipping point popping moment where we can then start a national conversation, because we do not need to be naming the next generation alpha. That we do not need to do that. But there are marketers out there like crazy trying to get that one to stick. And I hope that I can change that and change the whole conversation about, at least with American generations, who we really are. And that's why the book is titled that. It's a book. It's an American story of technology change and who we really are. We are generations of technology. We are Gen Tech. So thank you again for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to explore it with you, Dom.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. That's why spaceship's on the cover, y'all. We got to put some rocket fuel on this book, baby. That's right. Got to send it to the moon, metaphorically speaking. We can't send it to the moon. We got to, well, unless you're gonna take a trip to the moon and read it while you're on the moon. That's the option, maybe. Since my man Richard Branson was able to travel to space, so that means, hey, you got the dollars to make your bank account holler. Then, well, you could do it too. Travel to the moon, maybe, and then read a book on the moon. Take a selfie.
Take a selfie with my Gen Tech book on the moon. I like that. By the way, I'll tell your listeners that if they order through my website, rickchromey.com, if they order the book, I do not charge you for shipping, and I give you an autographed copy. So it's about the same price right now as Amazon, except you get the free shipping and you get the autograph. So if that means anything to you, maybe my autograph will be worth something in 20 years. I don't know. But right now, it's free. Maybe someday I'll give away the book for free and I'll give my autograph away for $20. I don't know. See.
There you go. The old school way, like Charlie Tremendous Jones be like, hey, so can I get your autograph? It's like, oh, yeah, the book is free, but the autograph will be $10. This is like back in the day. It's like, yeah, I charge the autograph, kids.
Yeah, I ain't $10 cheap, but I'm $20 cheap right now.
Yeah. Yeah, $10 is a lot more back when he was alive. RIP to him. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would say relax. You can't see everything coming. Just relax. Enjoy the moment. A few years ago, I waited until I was 50 before I really traveled internationally, because I was afraid of that international travel. And I had an opportunity to go on a mission trip to train leaders in Tanzania, Africa, East Africa, at the base of the Great Kilimanjaro. And I did it. And it was an experience that changed me so much that I went back the next year to the same place and trained again. And then a few years later, I went to South Africa and been to Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast as well. I came to really love Africa. But in East Africa, the Swahili culture, they have this phrase that we learned from the Lion King, Hakuna Matata. And it really guides who I am now in my age that I'm at. And this is why I would tell my 25-year-old self, remember Hakuna Matata. And it means more than just no worries. It literally, in the Swahili culture, it means you don't look back with any regrets. You don't look forward with any fear. You live entirely in the thinnest slice of time, the present, because the present is a gift that's wrapped just for you to unwrap today, to enjoy and to explore. And when you get to that reality, that right now, my present is hanging out with my friend Dom, and that's a gift right there, and I'm going to enjoy it. So that's what I would tell my 25-year-old self.
Oh, man, a mic drop moment, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's right. That's powerful right there, indeed. That's right. That's right. Never thought I'd hear Hakuna Matata on this podcast, at least this day and age. It's like,
well, they call me the Lion King.
That's right. His name is Rick, baby. That's right. He's probably a ranger too, right?
That's right. Ranger Rick. Now, that's going way back. That's going way back there, Dom.
Oh, man. Well, for those who want to capture a bunch of titles and copies of your magical book and keep up with all the wonderful stuff that you're doing, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Again, rickchromey.com, RickChromey.com.
There we go, folks. Head over to rickchromey.com. Y'all buy some copies of the book. Buy like 33 copies of the book, and then tell 3 other people to buy 33 copies of the book. And then we'll have all these threes everywhere. And then it'll grow into this giant flower of awesome, a Gentech flower of awesomeness, y'all. It'll be freaking fabulous. That's right, folks. I'm telling you, it'll change your life 1 quarter at a time, maybe.
There you go. Yeah. If you're brave enough to find me on social media, I'm also out there on Twitter and Facebook. I have a Facebook page dedicated to it's an author speaker page. You can find me really easy there at Facebook. You can follow me. I'm kind of hard to become a friend with at Facebook, Dom, because I have a fundamental belief that to be a friend of me personally on Facebook, I need to be a friend of yours in life. So don't be offended if I don't take your friend requests. I have a speaker author page for you to follow me and to be a part of these conversations. But as far as being a friend of mine, I reserve that for people like Dom, people I've met personally. So Dom, you and I can be friends after today. But anyway, I'm also, I think I'm on Instagram. My publicist said I'm on Instagram, but I can't figure out Instagram enough to be able to make it work as well for me.
That's right, folks. Don't worry. We got some brave listeners. Don't worry. Social media, it's good stuff. It's good stuff when you use it right indeed. It's good stuff when you use it right indeed. So follow all social media pages too. So any parting words before we close up shop, Pastor Rick?
Just live real. Just live real. Be true to yourself. Be true to others, and be true to God.
How's it going, you super special, awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode. Heck, even shoot myself or the guest an email and let them know what you liked most about this interview, so that way they can stay inspired to keep pushing out great work.